Hi everyone, it's Susan with the Narcissistic Abuse Journey Alliance. Narcissists don't like sick people and the insults they spew are unbelievable. This is a little bit of a continuation of my last video, Narcissists Don't Like Sick People. For those of you who have been following me, you know that my husband Nick, died 4 years ago. It's just 4 years now, after a valiant struggle with a rare, incurable neuromuscular disease called Friedreich's ataxia. He made it to his 51st birthday. His initials are NAJ, the birth and inspiration of the Narcissistic Abuse Journey Alliance. Here's Nick. He always looked like this, and he always looked young. I think he had one gray hair. I used to tease him about that. I want to add, which I failed to say in my last video, that some narcissists are very good at putting on a good show when someone is sick. But it's short-lived. They are consummate actors, and some narcissists will put on a show for just a short time, but deep down, they feel inconvenienced, and they will let you know, mostly passively aggressively, just how inconvenienced they are. Nick's parents, my outlaws, in-laws, Bonnie and Clyde, that's what I called them. Nick always laughed when I called them that. They were toxic narcissists. I would say, Lovey, because that's what we called each other, Lovey. I would say, Lovey, what's the matter with your parents? And he would say, I know, Lovey. I lived with it. My parents were empaths. Unfortunately, my parents died in a tragic car accident a few years after Nick and I were married. They lived 8 hours away. I talked to my mother on a Monday, and Thursday they both were dead. So I've had my share of tough losses. I have narcissists in both my immediate and extended family, and so did Nick. And we were a team and a united front against our narcissistic family members and healthcare professionals. There were insults galore over the years. Narcissists hate being inconvenienced and even delight sadistically in an individual's misfortune or ailment, and that's sadistic with a capital S. Often, they neglect or abuse their children by not getting the proper medical treatment that they need, or even scholastic help they might need. Nick and I listened to many covert and overt insults over the years. It's unbelievable how rude and insensitive a toxic narcissist or toxic person can be. I'm going to share some examples and what I think. Most of the examples will be referring to Bonnie and Clyde and what they said over the years, but we heard all kinds of insults from our family narcissists. My sister, my cousin, my uncle. You may think I'm being too sensitive or too hard on the toxic individuals in these scenarios, but that's okay, and we're all entitled to our own opinion. So here are some examples. Nick made an appointment for us to go and talk to the MD/scientist that isolated the gene for Friedreich's ataxia. We traveled with Nick using a manual wheelchair to Montreal. We get to the hospital where the doctor's office is, and it's a small French-speaking hospital, and no one speaks English. We eventually found someone who could help us and direct us to the doctor's office, and the secretary says he's across town at the university giving a lecture. I was so mad. He knew we were coming, and he knew Nick was coming with a wheelchair. So we get in a cab. Nick promptly bangs his head on the car door. Lucky for Nick, he had a hard head, but he was okay. We get to the university, and after the lecture, we meet with the doctor and his colleague, who was an older woman in her 70s. And I ask her a question pertaining to the science of Friedreich's, and she looks at me and says, "You seem intelligent, but you really aren't getting what I'm trying to tell you." or something like that. I just froze. On the way home on the plane, I said to Nick, "Did you hear what that old bag said to me?" And he said, "No." And I told him, and he just shook his head. We were so tired after chasing that narcissist around town, and then it was a long day. So, another example. Nick had a back surgery to correct a curvature in his spine. I know just enough to be dangerous, so I was watching everything and everyone at the hospital like a hawk. I slept at the hospital and would go home in the middle of the night to shower and get the mail, so I would be back for rounds first thing in the morning. On this one particular day, the doctor ordered some chest x-rays, but it seemed like they were taking one right after the other. And finally, when they came in again, and it seemed like they were taking a fourth x-ray, I said no. And the doctor said he wanted to check to make sure Nick didn't have pneumonia. And I said, no, that's enough. You can share the x-rays with the rest of the staff, no more. And the doctor looked at me and said, "Sue, where does that passion come from? You're like a vigilante." Now that was a primo backward compliment / insult. So I looked at him and I said, all I can say is if I were in the hospital, I would want me there. He knows darn well that if it was his mother or his brother or his sister in the hospital, that he would be watching like a hawk too. So that was an interesting insult, I thought. When Nick tried several million times to exercise healthy boundaries with Bonnie and Clyde, and to no avail, of course, we basically just decided to just meet them out once in a while at a restaurant for lunch. Over the years, we limited our time with them due to the crazy and disrespectful behavior they showed Nick, and me actually too. When Nick wasn't doing so well, and we hadn't seen them in a while, but we met them for lunch, Bonnie says to Nick, "You look completely different." I don't know why I use that voice, but I guess that's my mommy dearest voice. She said, "You look completely different." Instead of maybe saying something like, "Is everything all right, dear? You look thinner to me." Or something like that. She constantly was insulting him. Mostly covertly. But he recognized it and pretty much just let it slide off his back. He used to say to me, "My mother is a stupid woman." And he didn't say it in disrespect. He sort of just said it like it was a fact. When Nick and I were dating, his parents had a family cookout, and I said to Nick, "I think I'll make my 15-layer Jell-O mold. It's pretty and it tastes good and people like it." And he said, "Great." So we get to Bonnie and Clyde's, and I'm unmolding the Jell-O. And Clyde did say some nice things once in a while, but not Bonnie. She was definitely a downer. I unmolded the Jell-O, and Clyde said, "Sue, that's beautiful." And Bonnie says, "Oh, I wouldn't have gone to so much trouble." And I thought afterwards, and I probably said this to Nick, no, she doesn't go to any trouble. She doesn't make anything nice. She doesn't want to make anything fun or enjoyable. It's just, this negativity all the time. So I'm saving the best for last, the grand finale, which was when Nick died. Bonnie and Clyde went to Florida and didn't come to Nick's memorial service, the service that he wanted. When I said, You can't change 1 week of vacation? Bonnie said, we can do it in 3 weeks when we get back. Or I guess I should say, we can do it in 3 weeks when we get back. Oh my God. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. The show goes on. And Bonnie proceeded to break into a narcissistic rage and scream at me that I was crazy. I didn't even flinch. Her mask fell completely off, and she showed me exactly who she was. I no longer speak to Bonnie and Clyde. They haven't called me, and I haven't called them, and I'm fine with it. Nick was always funny. He always said, my parents are going to die by inches. Sending love and hugs, and I'll be in touch again soon.